Hello there and welcome to the Star Wars Showcase YouTube channel. I've got a video here that I've been looking forward to making for months, as I'm happy to offer you some tips and tricks for making your very own Clicker Stormtroopers. Let's get into it. As a huge Last of Us fan, this was really kind of a dream crossover project for me, but it's also one that presents some new painting challenges for those who are interested in pursuing it, as working on the cordyceps and the fungi there requires a lot in terms of your kind of paint layering and your weathering, so this is definitely a fun project to tackle if you're looking for some challenge there. Now we need to start off by giving some props to Bounty Supply Co. This is where I purchased the 3D printed head sculpt for this project, and as you can see there is a ton of great detail in here. There's the tendrils of the fungus, there's cracks in the armor, and as we work to add different paint and weathering to this, a lot of those details come through really nicely, so big props in terms of the design and the print here. For our base body, I'm just using a basic Black Series Stormtrooper here, and I've started off by doing a layer of Krylon matte spray here. So you can notice, when compared to another Stormtrooper here, the project that we're working on doesn't have that same gloss, that same shine, and that's very intentional, as that matte spray, in addition to getting rid of that gloss, what that's actually going to do is give us a very nice painting surface to use. So that, in conjunction with our head sculpt, which has been primed here just in black, you can honestly prime that in whatever color you'd like, is going to give us a painting surface that is going to adhere all of the different weathering and paint very well. It's not going to slide off. You can imagine if you were painting with a water-based acrylic on plastic, that paint's just going to slide off. It's very glossy, it's very watery. So with that nice primer layer in place, we're then able to use some of our acrylic paints, and I'm using a matte white here for the Stormtrooper armor on the helmet, and then I've got a couple of other colors assembled here as well to do the fungus, and you can really choose what you'd like, but I got with a couple of different yellows, a little bit of a purple, some tan, is what we're going to be doing here is layering some of these colors on top of each other to get that nice fungal effect. Now, as I try to stress when painting with action figures or other miniature projects, we always want to do multiple layers of thinned paint. And so I've taken my white paint, I've added a couple of drops of water in that palette, mixed things together really well, and now you can see I'm just adding multiple layers with some time to dry in between each layer. And what that's going to do is give us very even paint coverage that doesn't have that kind of gloppy effect to it. So you can see here, after having added a couple of layers to that white, I've left the fungus untouched for the time being, but now you can see we've kind of got that signature Stormtrooper white there in the background. And zooming in and adjusting the lighting a little bit more, to be honest, we're going to be putting a lot of weathering over this white, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but we do want even coverage so that black primer isn't showing through. From there, you'll go ahead and add some of the additional details for the Stormtrooper helmet. So those touches of black on the lenses and that stripe across the head, some bits of gray here and there. These, again, don't have to be perfect because we're putting a lot of weathering on, but we do want to make sure that they're present because it'll look strange if they're not accounted for. Once we have the normal Stormtrooper helmet painted up, I went through and added a layer of purple on the fungus here. And I wanted to do just one thin layer of that purple paint there, as you can see in this Last of Us clicker reference, there's a touch of purple in the very heart of that cordyceps fungus there in the middle of the clicker's head. And that was something, as I layered different, paint on top of it with the different yellows and kind of the oranges and the tans, I wanted a little bit of that purple to show through, as I thought that kind of had this kind of otherworldly, kind of unnatural element to it. With the purple down as our foundational base, I then went through and added a thin layer of this kind of mustard yellow on top of that. And the technique I'm using here, again, is taking one very thin layer of paint, putting just a little bit on my brush, and not exactly painting for 100% coverage here, but just kind of dabbing at things. So we're getting that yellow, it's there, it's visible, but the purple underneath it still maintains kind of some visibility as well. And that's what I really kind of the effect I wanted to get on this fungus, was many different layers kind of stacked up on each other to give this kind of showcase of different colors as opposed to just one standard like yellow or red. With those layers in place, I then added a little bit of tan to some of the different tendrils that are poking out. I thought that would kind of be a nice effect to complement some of the other colors going on there. And I think that's my favorite part of the clickers and of this project is we're seeing this real, this biodiversity quite literally on the face there. In that spirit, and to add a little bit of that kind of spore effect, I took a little bit of yellow paint as well and just gave things a little bit of a dry brush. I think one of the kind of ideas in nature is this idea of this bright coloration, kind of meaning danger or poison or stay away. So even though we have kind of these darker, more muted colors, I wanted to make sure some of that yellow was able to show through. And in this case, I'm just employing a very basic dry weather technique. You get a little bit on your brush, you kind of mop some of that away with a paper towel, and then give things just a nice once over. And as you can see with the different layers we have now, plus the dry brush, we're getting this really nice kind of fungal effect to things. At this point, I paused for a beat as I wanted to add a little bit of a wash coat just to bring out some more of that detail, both in the fungus as well as in the different cracks in the helmet itself. And so I'm just using a basic Reichland Flesh shade. This is a Citadel wash, which you can just understand it is a very, very watered down paint. And what happens when we use this is we put just a little bit of it on our model here, and it just fills the different cracks and the recesses here. And because this is a really well-designed model here, there's a lot of detail for that wash coat to go in to fill into. So I've added that wash to some of the different parts of the fungus, some of the different parts of the helmet, as well as some of the different raised areas, just so that we're able to get kind of that dirty, weathered look around all of the details on the model itself. After giving that a little bit of time to dry, I just went in and grabbed kind of a lighter shade of tan just to add kind of some detail to the outside rim of the fungus. That's something that I noticed in the models kind of showed through, and I wanted to have something that was, again, shining a little bit brighter against some of the darkness of the fungus as well. So this was just taking a fine tip brush, doing a nice kind of outer layer to the very outside rim of that across all the different growths that are poking through on the helmet. And from there, I think you really have a pretty close to completed product. I think you can play around with the different weathering techniques, or if you wanted to do some more color variation there, but I'm very happy with how these turned out following these steps, and think that could be a good springboard to any other detail you wanted to add. Setting those helmets aside, I then went about and did just another similar layer of that wash coat on the armor of our Stormtrooper. And again, because we added that Krylon matte finish, you'll notice that the wash is sticking a lot more than if we were just painting that right on the, kind of glossy armor of the unaltered Stormtrooper. And once you've gone through and done that, you'll notice, the difference is night and day here. We have this nice kind of grungy, dirty Stormtrooper body, which honestly might be good for like a remnant Stormtrooper if you were pursuing a different project. But when added to our helmet, that also now features in this particular shot a little bit of that extra wash coat added to some of the other areas, I think we get a really nice, dirty looking Clicker Stormtrooper. And again, I'm using just a very basic wash coat in order to get this effect here. This is your Reichland Flesh shade. There's all kinds of different wash colors and textures like this, so check those out. After that wash coat is dried for a while, I also did a little bit of extra dry weathering to this, and I'm using a Tamiya Weathering Master Kit, and you can basically understand this almost like the application of makeup. You take these little palettes that have these different color textures, and you have this little applicator sponge, and all I'm doing is taking some of that essentially powder and adding it to some of the raised areas of the armor. And what that does is it adds a lot of depth to things. It looks really great in terms of like if there were a light shining, like there's some shadow being cast or there's some definition. And all you really do is take that little brush I've got in my hand there, kind of smudge some of the material from the palette on there, and then just lightly brush that on there to get this nice detailed effect. And once you apply that as you see fit to the rest of the Stormtrooper's body, you pretty much have your completed Clicker Stormtrooper. So when we get these guys in kind of the lightbox setting, you can see that they're a lot of fun to pose and play with, as you can add some of these, more exaggerated kind of poses and postures to those different joints. The wrists and the knees can kind of jut out at different angles, and that in conjunction with the dirty, grungy weathering and paint that we've added to it, I think really capture the essence behind these guys. And side by side with that Stormtrooper from the beginning again, you can see just how far we've come as we've gone from, a shiny, fresh off the assembly line Stormtrooper to this kind of gross basement-dwelling clicker. So this was a really fun project for me. I hope it's one that you enjoy, that you might want to pursue on your own if you're a big fan of The Last of Us and Star Wars like I am. It's definitely niche in terms of representing two different kinds of media there, but I also think it's a really fun exercise in working with painting and weathering in this space. On top of that, if you're into toy photography like I am, I think this really lends itself well to some kind of fun and unique shots. You can add some different lighting there and really just try to capture, some of the kind of horror within, the Last of Us universe, as well as some of the, kind of heroism of Star Wars. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this project, if this is one that you'd like to pursue, if you have any other tips or recommendations in terms of, color mixing or weathering. I've been doing this for a couple of years, really since the pandemic started, but I acknowledge that I am not a master painter in any right and would always love to learn more if anyone has any tips or tricks of their own. If you're interested in checking out some more videos like this, make sure to check out some of the other content on the channel. We have other action figure custom tutorials as well as reviews of some of the latest products, so check those out.